Again, this is Pat Windrow at the Cable Easel, Channel 6 in Brookhaven, bringing you a program every week at this time with the solving, possibly, of problems of painting or drawing. And tonight, specifically, because there was a request from a caller a couple of weeks ago about stretching canvas. So I brought in the materials, the tools needed to stretch canvas, because it seems somebody gave him canvas and stretchers. These are stretchers that you've seen in the art stores, and he doesn't know how to do it. So I brought in what is needed, and I've also brought in whatever expertise that I can give, and then if the time allows, towards the end of the program, I'll paint something on this little canvas. There's my table of stuff. This, as I'm picking up here, is called a pair of canvas pliers. You can see that they are gripping. It's a gripping tool, and I'll show you the purpose of it later. This is a tack hammer. If anybody thinks that painters are only painters, they also have to be technicians and construction people. Here are the canvas pliers. Here is a tack hammer. Here is a staple gun, familiar, I'm sure, to anybody who does home repairs and works at home. Of course, the staples in case we run out. And here are the stretchers. Here is the way you buy the stretchers. This one has a number 12 written on it. I'm sure you can see that. And this is a number 9, 9 inches long, which means that if you want to do a 9 by 12 canvas, you get 2 of the 12s and 2 of the 9s. Then you have canvas. I brought in a piece of canvas which comes usually rolled. This one happens to be primed. That means it's ready to paint on. And I brought in my palette, upon which I will squeeze my paints. I brought in a minimum amount of paints. Here is a small jar of turpentine and a couple of brushes for the general beginning of a painting. With any luck at all, we'll maybe be able to go past just the beginning. So, when you put these together, I also have you have to have a razor blade, a single-edged razor blade, for trimming the canvas after you have finished stretching it. I'm going to cut this string, separate these two, and show you, and maybe getting really nice and close so that I can show you how these corners join. All right, you see that these corners are cut in a particular way. There is a groove here, and there's a groove there. They fit into one another. You have to sort of tease them in. And it is essential that you have a square, a triangle. This is going to make a nasty noise, but I'm afraid this is going to be a shop for today. If you have a T-square at home, I have a black book here, which can tell me whether or not I'm setting this up square. I'm going to hold this here. I'm sure that you can understand exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to hold this here, and then I'm going to tap this so that it becomes as square as the book. You don't have to have a T-square and a triangle, as long as you've got a commercially put together book. Let me just put this on the floor and hammer it there. Now, the same thing happens with the other side. Of course, you have to be sure that you get the 12-incher on the 12-inch side, because that's what you're making. You're making a 9 by 12. Once again, you're going to fit these corners in. You tease them in by themselves, and I'm not going to hammer these too hard because it just makes an awful noise. Nobody wants to hear me hammering. Here is a 3/4 assembled stretcher for a 9 by 12 canvas. The fourth one, obviously, is going to go in at the end, and you tease one corner in. Tease one, that's great. There's a marvelous close-up. You tease one corner in this way. You don't have to tease it. It'll go in, and then the other one will go in, and you hammer them down. That's on the table. I better not do that because it'll make it just awfully loud. I'm going to do it on the floor where there's carpeting so that you can see that. Oh, let me get that in there. And here's the way you assemble the stretchers. Make sure that they are square, because there's nothing more annoying than seeing a canvas that is just off square. Okay, we have this set to receive the canvas. Good. Now, canvas is sort of unrelenting. It's stiff, it's extremely heavy. You can hear by the noise. See, it's got a rather heavy sizing on it. And the reason that I brought the razor blade is because it is far less difficult to handle with a razor blade than with a pair of scissors. Here is the selvage of the canvas. This is where it comes off the mill, and it is presumably straight with the grain of the canvas. So you would use that as a guide against the side of your stretchers. So you're going to put this is the way you put it. You put it on the stretcher like this, over the edge. The staple gun will staple it along as you go along, and with a small canvas like this, there is not too much problem about stretching it tight because it's not such a large expanse. It's when you start stretching 5-foot long canvases that you get into a problem about pull and a nice drum-like top to the canvas. It has to be a drum. It has to be as tight as a drum. So I've got 3 staples in here. The stretchers have a wider part on one side than on the other. You would put the staples in the wider part. You need to have some fairly strong hands to do this. If you've got a trick thumb like I have, sometimes it's a problem. All right, so I've got this set up with the straight line of the stretchers. There's obviously too much canvas here, as you can see, so you would cut it. We can get down on, come down and I'll show you. The cutting of it should be fairly simple. You just run a nice new single-edged razor blade down the side, giving about 3/4 or an inch of canvas on the side, and then you cut this one also. There. Now, if you don't own a staple gun and you want to do this, you probably do own a hammer of some sort, and you also own some tacks. Now, this is the way canvases were put on their stretchers a long time ago, because staple guns are a comparatively recent invention. Here are little blue-cut carpet tacks. Yeah? Now, I'm going to show you how you handle this thing. A real close one will show the mechanism and the anatomy of this thing. This thing has got this foot here, which when I show you how you use it, will lean up against the canvas and pull tight. Here is how you do it. Now, how can we get this really clear? I'm grabbing the canvas with these pliers, and I'm pulling it against. See, this little foot here goes against the stretcher. Goes against the stretcher. You hold it with the left hand if you're right-handed, which I am. You hold it with the left hand, and you staple it with the right. I assume, of course, that all people's hands work well enough to do this. Then you can proceed on. That's why you have to leave enough canvas to grab it with these pliers. I feel as though I'm in competition with that man that has that program called This Old House. And you do this until you have stretched it all around. So bear with me. If you have any questions about what I'm doing, that's why I'm here, to be able to answer them. Call me on the number that they're going to show you. And don't feel, let me see which is the wide part. Don't feel shy about calling up and asking me questions, because that's the point of this kind of a program. And I could give you some information which is very quickly dispensed and also very useful to you. Here is the canvas stretched and attached on two sides, the long sides. As you can see, this side still has to be handled. We have something of an unfortunate bulge, but that gets taken care of as you pull on the other side. Let me see, I think this is a little bit long, so I'm going to trim some of this out, some of this off. Be sure you don't let this single-edged razor blade get to you, because they are sharp. You grab the canvas and pull. I wonder, maybe you can see how when you pull it, you get rid of those of that uneven stretching. This is not the easiest thing in the world to do, but it is essential if you are a painter and if you want to be able to stretch any size canvas you want. You see, because when you go to the store, you have standard sized canvases, 14 by 18, 9 by 12, 8 by 10, 20 by 24, 16 by 20, but maybe you want to stretch a different shape. Maybe you want a 3-inch by 12 feet or 3 inches by 6 feet. You have to be able to construct your own stretchers and stretch your canvas over them, because maybe you don't want to paint a standard size. So that's why it is important to know how to do this. Not just because the man who called had been given stretchers and a canvas for Christmas and didn't know how to handle it, but also because if you are a painter with some imagination and you have an idea about a strangely shaped canvas, you certainly should be able to do it yourself. Here are the corners. As you can see, here we have two corners. You fold one down and the other one over it, and you staple that into place. A long staple is convenient for this, and there's your corner. We do the same thing on the other side. Here's this corner, and you pull this, you fold that over this way. Let me see if I can show you. Yeah, there you go. Hold it with your left hand and staple it with the right. That's a fairly nice corner. It's beginning to look pretty good. It's not too much out of square, because I didn't really measure it, because time is of the essence here. And so we have the final stretching of this end, this nifty little tool here. I think this cost me $7 at Pearl Paint in New York, $6.95 or $7. It looks like a much more expensive piece of equipment. And also, if you go into a yard sale somewhere and there's an artist that doesn't want these things anymore, and you might be able to pick it up for 50 cents, but you have to know what it looks like. And this, therefore, is maybe a nice piece of information for you. This is a canvas pliers. It's amazing how these things are invented, obviously out of the necessity to be able to pull these things tight. And I think that you can see the purpose for that foot. It leans against the stretcher and pulls the canvas tight. I find this invaluable. I've lost it a number of times or misplaced it in the studio and find myself really with problems using a plain pliers. It simply doesn't work as well. Now, there we have the same thing that we had before. Why do I say we? I have the same thing as before. Going to take care of the corners, fold in and over. Then I'm going to deal with these mysterious little things which you see in the stores. I want to show those. These are little wedges of wood. They're strong. I believe they're made of maple. And you need 8 per canvas, because on the back there are, can you get real close? See these holes in the back here? There are little holes. There they are. Here's one and here's another. This is the way you insert these keys. They're called keys. You put them with the flat side against the flat side here, and you knock them in very lightly, a little bit at a time. The other one goes in the other direction. Let me see if I can, there. See, that one goes in that direction, the other one goes in the other one. Get real close on this, maybe, because this is maybe not too comprehensible. There they are. Aren't they nice the way they snugly fit in there? Same thing on the other side. You keep doing this until you have all 8 of them in place. One in one direction and one in another direction. And I'll show you, I'll give you the purpose for these. It is not as necessary on small canvases as it is on big ones because of obvious reasons. It is not as difficult to stretch a small canvas as it is to stretch a large one. But the theory and the method is all the same. They go into the little corners, and then you hammer them in with care. You don't clobber them in as if you're building the side of a barn. You have to use them, put them in delicately, because what you're trying to do is to stretch the canvas just that little bit more than what you did with the pliers. So I'm going to, a couple of taps here, and you go around, as you go around, you begin to feel, on a larger one, even on this one, that the canvas is getting progressively tighter all the time. Well, we have here, now on a large canvas you would wet the canvas a little bit before you put the keys in, because that makes it become more supple. And the keys go in, stretches it. See, the corners have been separated. You have separated the corners by inserting those keys in there, and they have stretched the canvas even more than you did when you pulled them tight with the pliers. So we have, it has to be like a drum. We have a call. Okay, that's good. Let's take the call and see if I've made myself clear. Yes, good evening. Hello there. Nope. Are we on? Somebody is calling and has a question. Hello, are you there? Yes?
Are you there, Pat?
Yes, I'm here.
This is Bob. I'm the one that requested that in a future show you put the project on that you have right now.
Good.
And I just want to say you're one heck of a woman. I thank you for what you've done. That canvas stretcher tool
Good.
is something I never even considered before I was doing it with my fingers. And it was very time-consuming and at times painful. But I just wanted to express that thank you very much.
Good.
It's something I will remember for quite a while.
Wonderful,
I really
Bob.
appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so pleased that you tuned in tonight. You know, I'm never quite sure whether or not the requests that I do, the people who've asked for them will tune in at the right time. But anyway, yes, the tools, it's so dumb that you can't go and find this out, easily. However, this has been fairly easy. And for a minimal investment, you'll be able to stretch any amount of canvases that you want in any shape that you want. So we accomplished that much, right?
I appreciate it extremely. And as I say, it's something that you've assisted me with. I hope that you've assisted your other listeners with.
Good.
It will stay with me for quite a while. The appreciation will.
You'll be also able to show other people how to do it, which is what you call the domino, the domino theory of you show one person wants something, and that means that many, many other people will benefit because they'll be shown in turn.
Well, I thank you very much, Pat.
Thanks so much, Bob. Now we'll go on with the business of preparing this thing and possibly doing a small painting. Goodbye. Good. All right, well, that's neat that the person who requested this tuned in and was able to get this information. However, what I didn't do was to tell you about the tacks in case you don't own a staple gun. Come on in close. The little carpet tacks are very sharp. These little blue guys that you can barely see. And this is the way Rubens and Rembrandt and all those wonderful guys would stretch their canvases or have their assistants stretch their canvases. It is so sharp that you can simply stand it in there and then get your hammer and, well, I hate to do that on the table because I know that's going to be a terrible sound. All right, let's just do it. This is the way the old canvases looked. Remember when you used to see old canvases with these little tacks every inch and a half or so? Well, that's because the staple gun wasn't as, universally owned. So everybody had a hammer and some tacks. Actually, I prefer the tacks because I'm a throwback. I'm not sure that I trust these little aluminum or steel staples as much as I trust the hammering in of a carpet tack, nice and secure into the canvas. However, the reason that these things that the staple gun is easier is because, as you can see, you have to have two hands. And when you've got this thing, pulling your canvas and trying to get that sitting there, you really need three hands. So that's why the staple gun has come in handy. However, if you're a real purist, you will want to see your little tacks in the edge. That's so much for tacks. Very good. Now, I brought in some paints and a little palette, which you can see has been tenderly and carefully cleaned somewhat and still looks perfectly awful. But nevertheless, I've brought in a minimum amount of colors. You don't need to have very many colors for a demonstration. Another call. Okay, let's have that call and then we'll do some more. We'll do some painting. Let's go. Okay, good evening. Can I help you?
Hello.
Yeah?
I'd like to ask you, how do you get the oils to dry fast?
Oh, well, I use a medium, which is extremely expensive. That's not because I'm rich, but because I have to use the medium. I paint so many pictures, and I need to have them done in a rather quick time sometimes. It's a medium which I buy in Baltimore, so I'm not going to suggest that you write to Baltimore and pay $10 for a jar this big. There is a product on the market called a Japan dryer. That's the name of it, Japan dryer. It's liquid. It's almost as liquid as turpentine. And you would cut down on the quantity of linseed oil that you use because linseed oil takes a long time to dry.
Okay. One other question. How do you transport your paintings when you're out in the field?
Well, when I'm an itinerant painter. I take a maximum amount of paints and a minimum amount of clothes when I go on a trip, which means that I have to be able to have some way of bringing back many canvases, maybe even 6 or 7 or 8 or 10, depending upon how long I'm away. Do you know what a kneaded eraser is?
I'm sorry, no.
You don't. It's that funny gray stuff that you buy in the art store. It's an eraser made of rubber, and you can form it in any shape you want. I use that. However, there is a product which everybody's household has in the fall. It's called Mortite. Have you ever had Mortite?
Yes.
Okay, you put that around the windows for the drafts. You can form a piece of some Mortite into a ball, and when your canvas is wet, take another canvas and put a ball of Mortite on each corner of your painting and another canvas over it. Another stretched canvas the same size over it. And that will give you that space in between.
Okay.
You see that?
Thank you very much.
Well, okay, it's my invention. I'm not sure that all itinerant painters carry their paintings that way, but that works very well for me.
Okay, thank you.
All right, fine. The business of transporting wet paintings should not be as large a problem, and sometimes I do have problems, but that you invent things when you have to. That seems to work for me. Very well. So we've got the canvas stretched. I've got the primary colors. I've got plus white. I've got yellow and a touch of ultramarine blue that I'm going to put over in the blue field. A touch of, I think this is cadmium red. I brought up an absolute minimum of color because there's no need to transport 21 tubes of color when all I'm doing is giving a demonstration on the materials of the work. And here is some old and almost dried up burnt umber, which is a dark brown with a slightly reddish tint. So we have here, I have my turpentine over here, a brush, and I'm going to mix let's see if I should show you this. Yes, I think that that's all right. I'm going to mix right on the canvas here a predominantly blue. I'm standing, as you can see, predominantly blue. I'm going to temper that with a touch of red, which brings you into the mauve tones, and give it a touch of yellow to get rid of the really mauve. This is what I call a good base color, a little bit more blue, a good base color, so that I can start somewhere. And if I'm doing a landscape, I like to start, of course, with the part that's the farthest away, namely the most distant color. The most distant color, most of the time, is of course blue, seeing as how if you're doing landscapes, you're going to be working with sky. Standing and painting with the canvas down like this is not always the best idea, but when you're out in the field, there are times when you can't put your canvas up on an easel. It's either too windy, or you don't have an easel, or you simply can't hold it on your on a chair because of the because of whatever physical problems there are that are out there will inhibit you from doing that. So I think that it's a good idea to train yourself to work with your canvas at any angle. The business of really having to set up the artist's easel out of doors doesn't always work. If you're a painter in nature, you are going to be leaning against tree stumps and rocks and fighting sand and flies and mosquitoes and sun and wind and so on. So this is all just to show you that to set yourself up in a $100,000 studio is totally unnecessary. You become an improviser in the field. I'm giving you the most simple kind of layout, and I'm using a piece of reference material of a sketch. I brought my little sketchbook in which I have a number of sketches. Wherever I go, I sketch. This is a little sketch done from the window of the airplane. That's a sketch of the Alps on an Air France flight over Switzerland. It isn't much, but it's what I saw out of the window. And there was a crystal blue lake down there, and this incredible peak with a little fluff of snow on the top. Little, it's probably 9,000 feet tall. Here is a church steeple in Venice. Let's see, what else have I got in this? Here's some people at the airport waiting for their luggage. So the reason that I'm saying this is not to show you what an absolute eager beaver I am about working all the time, but that it's a great time passer if you happen to be subjected to the difficulties. This is a carpet in somebody's house. I was sitting and they were talking to me, and I simply drew the design of their oriental rug that was on the floor. So these little books that I take with me everywhere are invaluable. This is a drawing of my husband when he was totally disgusted having to wait too long for baggage. This is a caricature of my neighbor as he was saying it was too bright in my greenhouse. Here's this. And anyway, I want to use this little, absolutely, apparently meaningless sketch that I have here at the top of the page. It isn't meaningless. It's what I saw in the hills of Virginia as I was on my way down Route, I believe it's 95, going down south towards southwestern Virginia. It is absolutely minimum lines. However, it does give you enough to go on when you come back. So, would it be very difficult if I were to decide to sit down at the easel? Do you think that we could? Okay, I would like to set this up here and let me sit down at the easel if the cameraman feels that I can do that without too much anguish. Is that going to be too difficult? If it is, I'll stay standing. Oh, good. Well, we've got a nice sort of mobile show here because now I can set my little sketch up and I can look at it with ease, and you'll see that it's this kind of thing is. So here I am sitting at an easel in studio. Now, a few moments ago I was standing at the table because I was pretending that I was outside and having to do with what there was, and now I'm sitting at the easel. So we have we've gone pretty far. We've taken four pieces of wood and a piece of cloth and have stretched it into a canvas. I am now going to be working from a very simple little sketch. I've put in a preliminary coat of a sky tone. It is a muted blue, and I'm going to show you how, with only 4 colors, 1, 2, blue, red, yellow, white, and burnt umber, I'm going to show you how I'm going to lay out the landscape of a sketch that I did driving. My husband was driving, of course, driving down a highway in Virginia. But it's these fast sketches that give you a nice, spontaneous composition, because, my gosh, you're going so fast, you have to put down the lines really in a hurry. And this kind of thing can come up with a really spontaneous and an interesting and very personalized composition. Don't, for heaven's sakes, work from photographs if you can possibly help it. Don't rely upon a photographer's eye for you to express yourself. What you're trying to do if you're painting is to be you, and to show the world, or just yourself, or maybe just close friends, what you see and what is interesting to you, to your eye. A photographer does very nicely with his camera. That doesn't mean that that's the only source of information. You are an excellent source of information, especially, I'm sure, with this mobile society that we live in, whereby almost everybody has a car. A lot of people have 2 and 3. They go places. They're always going somewhere, and we're always waiting. If you're not traveling, you're waiting. And while you're waiting, there is nothing more really exhausting than waiting for a long period of time. If you have something that you can rely upon, namely a sketchbook, to draw whatever is around you, I think you'll find that it enhances your powers of observation. It also can be terribly funny sometimes when you sketch people in their positions, because we are funny looking. And it also is a teacher, a self-teaching apparatus that you carry with you at all times. You are a teacher to yourself. So, enough of this lecturing. Let me get on with this business of trying to make something out of almost nothing. Very good. I have yellow and blue, and we can go back any time. So, here is yellow and blue makes the nicest kind of green, in my opinion. Do not buy green. It is a useless color to buy. Get yourself used to working with your own palette, your own color scheme of things. Some people see colors more vividly than others, either through a lack of training or because that's the way they see it. Some people see colors much more brilliantly because they want to. Yes, all right, let's have a phone call. We'll get back to our little canvas in a minute. Time is zipping along. Yes, hello there. How are you?
Hi.
Yes.
My name's Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Hi. And I'd like to ask, when you first start off painting, what's the best kind of painting to do? You know, oil paint or water paint or what?
Well, it's difficult for me to answer that, but I'm going to answer it anyway.
Uh-huh.
I'm a painter in oils. I paint in oils. I find watercolors extremely difficult because you can't make a mistake. In oil painting, you can make a mistake because oils are opaque. And if you make a mistake in a couple of days, your mistake has dried, and you can simply paint over it and correct the mistake. Whereas with watercolor, it's sealed. You can't go back. It looks terrible. So oils are, of course, more expensive, and so is canvas, as opposed to paper, which you'd work on with watercolor. However, do you paint at all or draw?
Oh, yes, yes.
Well, why don't you just go ahead and plunge in and buy some oils?
Okay, thanks a lot, Pat.
You're welcome. You were Jim?
Do you do shows, you know, where you display all your things and whatnot?
Yes, I do have a place that shows my work. Well, are you interested in coming and seeing them?
Yes.
Well, I have a gallery in Setauket. They usually put the name of the gallery and the phone number on the screen at the end of the show. Do take that down and call me for an appointment, because that's the only way you can catch me.
Oh, sure.
right.
Okay, thanks a lot, Pat.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. Let's get down to business and really put glasses on, because that's essential at this point in my life. I need my glasses. So here we are trying to pull a little simple composition out of a very, very minor sketch of something that I brought back from a trip. Now, with this almost imperceptible amount of color, that's much too dark, almost no color. I have a palette here with exactly 4 colors. As you can see, I'm working with a rather large brush. I'm paying attention to something which is essential in landscape painting, is color values, in order to achieve an illusion of distance, because you know painting is nothing more than an illusion. You have gotten a perfectly blank, flat space, and you are trying to create the illusion of distance. That's why color is as essential. Practically the most important part is the color of what you put in the distance. If you make it too dark, that distance won't be far away. It will be right close. If you make it too pale, you won't see it. So that's all a business of experimentation and working in the field. I have worked in the field for so long that I find it's easy to use some recall on the color schemes that I want to use, because I also, I think, have a somewhat photographic memory. I can remember color values with greater ease, I'm supposed, than a lot of others, because, well, I'm experienced. So the color of areas in the distance must be kept subtle and pale, so that when you start coming forward towards the foreground, you will find that the painting will assume a depth. Okay, these are presumably American hills coming stretched before you in a large expanded landscape. Now the trick, of course, is how do you condense an area which may cover 50 miles right in front of your eyes? How do you condense that down to a 9 by 12 inch canvas? It's a question of proportion. And when the only way that you can do that, there is no formula. This is there are points of reference that you can use, but there is also the need to get out there in that environment and to observe it. Now, the reason that I'm holding this canvas forward is because the lights here are so strong that they are giving us reflection problems. All right, let me take the same large, ungainly brush that I have and give you the illusion of a structure somewhere in the distance there, which is on my sketch as a little barn somewhere way off. You can barely make out what it is, but you know that it's something. It has no detail, it merely has a form. That will go on before the hill will go on that you are going to be putting in this section, which is now called the middle ground. Let me show you now what will happen if you introduce, well, hi there, this is me again. If you introduce a nice, brilliant field right here at these foothills, as if the sun has suddenly hit this part of the landscape and traveled across the road and hit this. It is what you call the interest of contrast. That field is bright yellow. Who knows why? I've chosen yellow, but when you're out there in the landscape, it could be that an entire field of newly sprouted something or others have given the brilliance to that pale yellow area. Now, as we come forward, and time is really clipping right along, as we come forward, I'm still using my 4 colors. This hill should not be, in my sketch showed me, okay, I'll wait for you to come back to the canvas. Yeah, this hill shouldn't be as high as the other one, for the simple reason that you don't want it geometrically too secure. You have to have it a little bit ungeometric, because that's what nature is. Nature is free and flowing in its patterns. Of course, as a painter, you also have to pick those free-flowing patterns and places, and it is rare that you will find 2 hills that are exactly the same height unless you put yourself in that position at exactly the same height. So with a very small quantity of effort, let me try and bring this ridge of the hill against that barn and have that barn almost hidden behind the ridge of hill. Give it a little bit of darkness here, because it is, after all, the foothills. Gives some interest, and it's also interpretive and spontaneous. I'm going to now continue this hill here, and the reason that it is going to show up so well is because that bright yellow field that was introduced there acts as a pale background for this darker space that is the part of this huge hill here. And it's very possible that this would be in shade, that the sun is hitting here and then all of a sudden this hill turns out to be in shade. You would give it a little bit of interest by giving some obviously protruding types of forms, whether they're trees or rocks. But as you can see, one brush and 4 colors can accomplish a great deal, and that's why this lesson should prove to you that you don't have to schlep a whole heavy mess of equipment with you if you're out studying. Of course, if you're going to do the so-called great American masterpiece, you should have more colors to work with. But this is a perfectly enough equipment to go traveling with. A minimum of effort and a maximum of observation. That's the key to being a self-taught itinerant landscape painter, which is what I consider myself to be primarily, is a landscape painter. So now we're coming towards the foreground. We need to get a little bit of variety in this foreground, a little bit of, well, let's get away a little bit from the green, and that will be done by putting a touch of your cadmium red in a mixture of the white and the yellow. You've eliminated the blue, which has gotten rid of the green. And as we come towards the foreground, let me simply get it to be lighter, presuming that maybe the sun has now struck this part of the landscape. You know, foregrounds are the death traps of painters. A painting can be absolutely ruined by a bad foreground. There are other programs on television that have problems. The painter has problems with the foreground, and usually the foreground falls right off into the lap of the viewer and nothing has happened. So beware of foregrounds. They are really the death traps of landscape painting. One of the ways that you can save it is by finding an interesting happening in the foreground and concentrating on it and using it as a tool to alleviate the problems of an uninteresting and totally failed foreground. It is nothing to paint a blue sky across the top of a canvas. It is something else again to concentrate on your foreground. All right, in order to be able to make this work well, we're going to have to be beginning to wind up the composition. 10, okay. Presuming that the shadow that is coming across this road is going to continue and find its way across the road over to this area. Once again, that very cooperative little field of lit yellow area is acting as a background for some kind of an indication that there is growth here. Now, we don't have to be a botanical rendering. This is an interpretive type of painting, which is the most that you can hope for when you are out in the field working with the problems of environment, weather, change of light, because the sun has an annoying habit of never staying in the same place for a long period of time. It moves, and with it move the shadows. So speed is the thing that one is that you need to practice in landscape painting, for the mere fact that the sun, fortunately, does move and go down every day. I'm working towards the foreground. I'm also going to give you a road, which is, a road is, oddly enough, as I've said a number of times before, never dark. The sky throws too much light on a road or a highway, and roads are almost always quite pale things because of their large flat surfaces that the sky reflects on. Naturally, of course, when it's wet, it's even lighter. So you might be able to give some darkness in the foreground as it comes toward you. That is a formula that happens out there in nature. But the thing that you have to avoid is to make it look like this is going up rather than out and away. And the way you do that is by giving it perspective drawing, whereby it gets wider as it comes towards you. Now, because we have a corner here, which is going to prove to be something of a problem for the composition of this painting, I personally probably would paint exactly what I see there where I see it, and concentrate on some nice form here in the front. I must throw the shadow across the road in a different kind of color. There is a shadow, this area is all dark, and the shadow would go across the road in a color which is compatible to the color of the road. And as long as the foreground here, on the other side of the painting, is as pale as it is, let's simply make that also pale in the foreground with the idea that we have a growing area here, which is in sort of semi-shade. Keeping the foreground simple is difficult because you see so much in the foreground. I also don't have my wonderful grass brush with me tonight, which would enable me to give you a tremendous amount of detail. But if we pull back and try and study this as far as color patterns are concerned, to get a nice long view of it, this is a 9 by 12 area, which has now trying to translate a very large and expansive scene. There are problems with it, of course, because I'm working, with a very minimal sketch. I'm also working in a tremendous speed. As I said, you have to. But these are acceptable sketches to take home when you have been out painting in the field. Let me continue with a little bit of this business of introducing some interest as you. Doubtlessly, this is the kind of thing that you will find out there, but it mustn't be clobbered, and it mustn't be done with too much with too much agony. Just slight suggestions, because nature's wonderful. All of a sudden, a little something will pop up in the distance, and you don't really know what it is. It could be a sudden spontaneous growth of some wonderful wild flower, and so on. And the same thing can happen as you're going to the foreground. Now, if you're really just dying to get this foreground close to you, you would have to introduce a very important shape and a very dark contrast. Hence, if you wanted to throw the entire picture into an enormous distance, you would introduce a form which would tell you immediately that this is right in the foreground, that it is a different perspective, and that you're going to really tell me that this is in the foreground, and that it is making all the rest of it really disappear. So the device of using diagonals to give distance is being demonstrated to you shamelessly. This is a device, and it works, and don't be afraid to use it, that these lines are converging towards the distance of a phone call. Okay, I'm almost in trouble, but I'm hoping not. Yes. Yes, good evening. What is your name?
Karen O'Brien.
Oh, hi, Pat. Can I help you?
Yeah, I'm having trouble painting things on paper that the way I see them in my mind.
Oh, did you call me once before?
No.
Oh, I got that same kind of call a couple of weeks ago and suggested to a young person, to call me at my home and we would talk about it at length, and she never did. In other words, you are trying to paint your inner visions, is that it?
Yes.
You see things in your mind and you are finding trouble painting it, yes?
Yes.
Well, that is a most difficult question. It's also probably one of the more interesting ones because you see what you've latched onto is the total mystery of painting. It is not difficult, Pat, to put an apple and an orange and a lemon on a table and paint what you see. That's not hard. What is really hard is to paint what you see in your mind. And that seems to be what you're having trouble with, yes?
Yeah.
Well, what are these things that you see in your mind? Are they places?
Yeah.
Are they animals?
No.
They're just places, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. The best thing that I can suggest is that you do it with experimentation. That you determine very clearly in your mind, maybe with little sketches, what you see. And what color those things and those places are.
Okay.
And then you have to build them. They don't just happen quickly because you're searching somewhere in the back of your person. You're looking for what you see. And that's very hard, Pat. Don't get discouraged, but it's the most difficult thing about painting. Anything else, honey?
No.
How old are you?
12.
Ah, well, if you want to take down my phone number when they put it on the screen at the close of the show, please call me sometime and maybe we can talk about it at greater length.
Okay.
All right, Pat.
Bye.
Bye. Did you say we have 2 minutes? Oh, not 2 anymore, I'm sure. Okay, let's just get back to this for just a moment and try to analyze what's happened here. We've put on color, presumably in some kind of organized manner, with paying attention to the fact that distance things are paler than things in the foreground, unless the sun happens to do wonderful things and play tricks on you. Also, pull back just a little tiny bit more so that we can get the rest of this fence here. Then we get the whole thing all-encompassing here. The device of using that fence to give you the illusion that things are going off into the distance works. It's okay. Then we can use an interpretive kind of thing and give the feeling that there is a lovely kind of wonderful happening here on the side by putting pure color just here and there. 30 seconds. Okay, we're going to wind up. Listen, I'm awfully glad you all tuned in. I'm delighted to have all these wonderful calls. I plan to be here next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. This will be rebroadcast on Saturday at 4. So, in the meantime, if you're working, have a good time. And this is me, Pat Windrow, at the Cable Easel, wishing you good night.